Section 5 of The Last Galley, Impressions and Tales. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org, read by Angela Curtis. The Last Galley, Impressions and Tales by Sir Arthur Conan Doyle. An Iconoclast. It was daybreak of a March morning in the year of Christ 92. Outside the long Semita Alta was already thronged with people, with buyers and sellers, callers and strollers, for the Romans were so early rising a people that many a patrician preferred to see his clients at 6 in the morning. Such was the good republican tradition, still upheld by the more conservative. But with more modern habits of luxury, a night of pleasure and banqueting was no uncommon thing. Thus one who'd learned the new and yet adhered to the old might find his hours overlap, and without so much as a pretense of sleep, come straight from his night of debauch into his day of business, turning with heavy wits and an aching head to that round of formal duties which consumed the life of a Roman gentleman. So it was with Aemilius Flagus that March morning. He and his fellow senator, Caius Bulbus, had passed the night in one of those gloomy drinking bouts to which the Emperor Domitian summoned his chosen friends at the high palace on the Palatine. Now, having reached the portals of the house of Flagus, they stood together under the pomegranate-fringed portico which fronted the peristyle, and, confident in each other's tried discretion, made up by the freedom of their criticism for the long self-suppression of that melancholy feast. "If he would but feed his guests," said Bulbus, a little red-faced, choleric nobleman with yellow-shot angry eyes. "What had we? Upon my life, I've forgotten. Plover's eggs, a mess of fish, some bird or other, and then his eternal apples." "Of which," said Flagus, "he ate only the apples. Do him the justice to confess he takes even less than he gives. At least they cannot say of him as of Vitellius that his teeth beggared the empire. No, nor his thirst either, great as it is. That fiery Sabine wine of his could be had for a few sesterces the amphora. It's the common drink of the carters at every wine-house on the county roads. I longed for a glass of my own rich Falernian or the mellow Cohen that was bottled in the year that Titus took Jerusalem. Is it even now too late? Could we not wash this rasping stuff from our palates? Nay, better come in with me now and take a bitter draught ere you go on your way. My Greek physician Stephanos has a rare prescription for a morning head. What, your clients await you? Well, I'll see you later at the Senate House." The patrician had entered his atrium, bright with rare flowers and melodious with strange singing birds. At the jaws of the hall, true to his morning duties, stood Lebs, the little Nubian slave, with snow-white tunic and turban, a salver of glasses in one hand, whilst in the other he held a flask of a thin, lemon-tinted liquid. The master of the house filled up a bitter aromatic bumper and was about to drink it off, when his hand was arrested by a sudden perception that something was much amiss in his household. It was to be read all around him, in the frightened eyes of the black boy, in the agitated face of the keeper of the atrium, in the gloom and silence of the little knot of ordinarii, the procurator or major domo at their head, who had assembled to greet their master. Stephanos, the physician, Caius, the Alexandrine reader, Promus, the steward, each turned his head away to avoid his master's questioning gaze. "What, in the name of Pluto, is the matter with you all?" cried the amazed senator, whose night of potations had left him in no mood for patience. "Why do you stand moping there? Stephanos, Baculus, is anything amiss? Here, Promus, you're the head of my household. What is it, then? Why do you turn your eyes away from me?" The burly steward, whose fat face was haggard and mottled with anxiety, laid his hand upon the sleeve of the domestic beside him. "Sergius is responsible for the atrium, my lord. It is for him to tell you the terrible thing that has befallen in your absence." "Nay, it was Datus who did it. Bring him in, and let him explain it himself," said Sergius in a sulky voice. The patience of the patrician was at an end. "Speak this instant, you rascal," he shouted angrily. "Another minute, and I'll have you dragged to the ergastulum, where with your feet in the stocks and the gyves round your wrists, you may learn quicker obedience. Speak, I say, and without delay." "It's the Venus," the man stammered. "The Greek Venus of Praxiteles." The senator gave a cry of apprehension and rushed to the corner of the atrium, where a little shrine, curtained off by a silken drapery, held the precious statue, the greatest art treasure of his collection, perhaps of the whole world. He tore the hangings aside and stood in speechless anger before the outraged goddess. The red perfume lamp, which always burned before her, had been spilled and broken. Her altar fire had been quenched. Her chaplet had been dashed aside. But worst of all, insufferable sacrilege, her own beautiful nude body of glistening Pentelic marble, as white and fair as when the inspired Greek had hewed it out 500 years before, had been most brutally mishandled. 3 fingers of the gracious outstretched hand had been struck off and lay upon the pedestal beside her. Above her delicate breast a dark mark showed where a blow had disfigured the marble. Aemilius Flagus, the most delicate and judicious connoisseur in Rome, stood gasping and croaking, his hand to his throat, as he gazed at his disfigured masterpiece. Then he turned upon his slaves, his fury in his convulsed face, but to his amazement they were not looking at him, but had all turned in attitudes of deep respect towards the opening of the peristyle. As he faced round and saw who had just entered his house, his own rage fell away from him in an instant, and his manner became as humble as that of his servants. The newcomer was a man 43 years of age, clean-shaven, with a massive head, large engorged eyes, a small clear-cut nose, and the full bull neck which was the especial mark of his breed. He'd entered through the peristyle with a swaggering, rolling gait, as one who walks upon his own ground, and now he stood, his hands upon his hips, looking round him at the bowing slaves, and finally at their master, with a half-humorous expression upon his flushed and brutal face. "Why, Aemilius," he said, "I'd understood that your household was the best ordered in Rome. What's amiss with you this morning?" "Nothing could be amiss with us now that Caesar has deigned to come under my roof," said the courtier. "This is indeed a most glad surprise which you've prepared for me." "It was an afterthought," said Domitian. "When you and the others had left me, I was in no mood for sleep, and so it came into my mind that I would have a breath of morning air by coming down to you and seeing this Grecian Venus of yours, about which you discourse so eloquently between the cups. But indeed by your appearance and that of your servants, I should judge that my visit was an ill-timed one." "Nay, dear master, say not so, but indeed it is true that I was in trouble at the moment of your welcome entrance, and this trouble was, as the fates have willed it, brought forth by that very statue in which you've been graciously pleased to show your interest. There it stands, and you can see for yourself how rudely it's been mishandled. By Pluto and all the nether gods, if it were mine, some of you should feed the lampreys," said the emperor, looking round with his fierce eyes at the shrinking slaves. "You were always over-merciful, Aemilius. It's the common talk that your cadence are rusted for want of use, but surely this is beyond all bounds. Let me see how you handle the matter. Whom do you hold responsible?" "The slave Sergius is responsible, since it's his place to tend the atrium," said Flagus. "Stand forward, Sergius. What have you to say?" The trembling slave advanced to his master. "If it please you, sir, the mischief has been done by Datus the Christian." "Datus? Who is he?" "The maculator, the scavenger, my lord. I did not know that he belonged to these horrible people, or I should not have admitted him. He came with his broom to brush out the litter of the birds. His eyes fell upon the Venus, and in an instant he had rushed upon her and struck her 2 blows with his wooden besom. Then we fell upon him and dragged him away, but alas, alas, it was too late, for already the wretch had dashed off the fingers of the goddess." The emperor smiled grimly, while the patrician's thin face grew pale with anger. "Where is the fellow?" he asked. "In the ergastulum, your honor, with the fuca on his neck." "Bring him hither, and summon the household." A few minutes later, the whole back of the atrium was thronged by the motley crowd who ministered to the household needs of a great Roman nobleman. There was the archarius, or account-keeper, with his stylum behind his ear; the sleek prugustator, who sampled all foods so as to stand between his master and poison, and beside him his predecessor, now a half-witted idiot, through the interception 20 years before of a datura dropped from Canidia; the cellarman, summoned from amongst his amphora; the cook, with his basting ladle in his hand; the pompous nomenclator, who ushered the guest; the cubicularius, who saw to their accommodation; the silentarius, who kept order in the house; the structor, who set forth the tables; the carpenter, who carved the food; the cinerarius, who lit the fire. These and many more, half curious, half terrified, came to the judging of Datus. Behind them, a chattering, giggling swarm of Lalagés, Marias, Ceruses, and Amaryllides from the laundries and the spinning rooms stood upon their tiptoes and extended their pretty, wondering faces over the shoulders of the men. Through this crowd came 2 stout varlets, leading the culprit between them. He was a small, dark, rough-headed man with an unkempt beard and wild eyes which shone brightly with strong inward emotion. His hands were bound behind him, and over his neck was the heavy wooden collar or fuka which was placed upon refractory slaves. A smear of blood across his cheek showed that he had not come uninjured from the preceding scuffle. "Are you Datus the scavenger?" asked the patrician. The man drew himself up proudly. "Yes," said he, "I'm Datus." "Did you do this injury to my statue?" "Yes, I did." There was an uncompromising boldness in the man's reply which compelled respect. The wrath of his master became tinged with interest. "Why did you do this?" he asked. "Because it was my duty." "Why then was it your duty to destroy your master's property?" "Because I am a Christian." His eyes blazed suddenly out of his dark face. "Because there is no God but the one eternal, and all else are sticks and stones. What has this naked harlot to do with him to whom the great firmament is but a garment, and the earth a footstool? It was in his service that I've broken your statue." Domitian looked with a smile at the patrician. "You'll make nothing of him," he said. "They speak even so when they stand before the lions in the arena. As to argument, not all the philosophers of Rome can break them down. Before my very face they refuse to sacrifice in my honor. Never were such impossible people to deal with. I should take a short way with him if I were you. What would Caesar advise?" "There are the games this afternoon. I am showing the new hunting leopard which King Juba has sent from Numidia. This slave might give us some sport when he finds the hungry beast sniffing at his heels." The patrician considered for a moment. He had always been a father to his servants. It was hateful to him to think of any injury befalling them. Perhaps even now, if this strange fanatic would show his sorrow for what he'd done, it might be possible to save him. At least it was worth trying. "Your offense deserves death," he said. "What reasons can you give why it should not befall you, since you've injured this statue, which is worth your own price 100 times over?" The slave looked steadfastly at his master. "I do not fear death," he said. "My sister Candida died in the arena, and I'm ready to do the same. It is true that I've injured your statue, but I'm able to find you something of far greater value in exchange, and I'll give you the truth and the gospel in exchange for your broken idol." The emperor laughed. "You will do nothing with him, Emilius," he said. "I know his breed of old. He's ready to die. He said so himself. Why save him then?" But the patrician still hesitated. He would make a last effort. "Throw off his bonds," he said to the guards. "Now take the fuka off his neck. So, now, Datus, I've released you to show you that I trust you. I've no wish to do you any harm if you will but acknowledge your error, and so set a better example to my household here assembled." "How then shall I acknowledge my error?" the slave asked. "Bow your head before the goddess, and entreat her forgiveness for the violence you've done her. Then perhaps you may gain my pardon as well." "Put me then before her," said the Christian. Emilius Flagus looked triumphantly at Domitian. By kindness and tact he was effecting that which the emperor had failed to do by violence. Datus walked in front of the mutilated Venus. Then with a sudden spring he tore the baton out of the hand of one of his guardians, leapt upon the pedestal, and showered his blows upon the lovely marble woman. With a crack and a dull thud, her right arm dropped to the ground. Another fierce blow, and the left had followed. Flagus danced and screamed with horror, while his servants dragged the raving Iconoclast from his impassive victim. Domitian's brutal laughter echoed through the hall. "Well, friend, what think you now?" he cried. "Are you wiser than your emperor? Can you indeed tame your Christian with kindness?" Emilius Flagus wiped the sweat from his brow. "He is yours, great Caesar. Do with him as you will." "Let him be at the gladiators' entrance of the circus an hour before the games begin," said the emperor. "Now, Emilius, the night has been a merry one. My Ligurian galley waits by the river quay. Come, cool your head with a spin to Ostia ere the business of state calls you to the Senate." End of section 5.